AI, the thing, right? Like you're like, I want to hear more about AI. Everybody wants to. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing. We have been in. I was having this conversation with the chief scientist at CrowdStrike. I was having a conversation, Black Hat, and I was going through this scenario with him and talking about AI and what it means from an overall perspective and the nomenclature and the terminologies, because data scientists get really wrapped up on, well, that's not really artificial intelligence. That's only machine learning, or that's only this, or that's only that. And so I was having this conversation with him, and I said, is this still like this big fight of defining? He's like, no, we've all given up. We don't care. It's all under the same moniker. So when you hear the terms AI, people who are really in the mouth might twinge and say, well, that's not this or that. But at the end of the day, nobody cares, right? Machines are doing the work. We need the machines to do the work more. You heard, if you listen to George's and Mike Santonis's and all the other stuff that they have on stage, the speed by which we got to move is faster, and the bad guys are really good. And this generative or all the other generative AI stuff that just recently came out in November last year, recent, I'd say less than a year, kind of put a cherry on top of the notification of it. But AI has been around for years, right? They talked about this, right? I mean, we used to talk about Watson and IBM and years ago and what they were doing and kind of all the way up through it. It's just now starting to really hit usefulness for us from a normalized type perspective. It's not backroom data scientists leveraging all of this stuff. And that's where it's now become the point where the adversarial AI, as George and Mike talked about on stage, has become an issue on that side. We have to take advantage on our side because they will be faster. And we need to be faster too. The concept here, I think in general, of what we looked at, I'm going to skip over who I am and what I've done, it doesn't matter. The concept that I have here is that we have to start leveraging these technological capabilities to finish the fight, to really be able to be in this mission, right? Like all of us organizationally are trying to do the best things we can do to protect our overall environments. And so from a technology and a platform perspective, and ultimately a day-to-day usage in our operations, security operations, and protecting the businesses that we all run in, we'll have to be able to start leveraging these capabilities. So you're going to see obviously a ton more of these capabilities put into a lot of the systems that are there. When we started the Revealed organization, the underlying component in the Epiphany platform is all based on it for the foundation. That's the whole premise behind it. And so the whole concept really is what are the forms of AI that we're really using and how are we doing this? So we've really come to this concept that we says, look, the defensive side of the fence, very relevant. Managed defense, MDR, which is really about right now what's going on. The security operations kind of component is very much about what has happened to you and how do I find it, fix it, triage it, and get you back to normal, right? Like that's a stop, breach, kind of all of those other types of things. The predictive side of the fence is really where the directional component's starting to go as well. And we got to combine the two. We got to bring these things together. So there's multiple forms of how do we get this generative AI and the predictive AI, which we'll talk briefly about those in just a sec about what the difference is. How do we get those things together? So we've seen the history lesson. We've known kind of where we kind of walked through that timeline when we were doing a lot of the machines themselves. And there was always this, how do we get the machines to do more for us? As much as the adversaries, bad guys, whatever out there working on there, we are learning from them as well. So as they start thwarting various things, we start figuring out how we make the machines actually work as well. And it's kind of this push and pull in the industry as an overall perspective. But we started introducing the ML AI capabilities in about 2010. You started to see that in the space. You had organizations like, I don't know, Silence, even Carbon Black, and then eventually CrowdStrike, obviously, all these guys started incorporating that down at the agent level, down at those perspectives. They've been leveraging this for a long time. And so all of that's about figuring out how do we do this to figure out what's going on those perspectives. Now we've got to the point where now we got to get to the real proactive solution side of the fence. So I talked about predictive AI. What is the difference in predictive? There is an actual difference between predictive AI and generative AI, right? So what's the major component? So the predictive AI is really the analytics side. That's the majority of what we've seen in the past history, that ML kind of component where it's basically doing the analytic function and then predicting what the outcomes theoretically could be. And that's where the overall analysis piece comes into play. And then we've got our generative AI where now, and it does use prediction engines. If you guys are familiar and you guys have studied this, it does use prediction engines to predict the verbiage that goes with it of how it's going to come out. But when you use it like, Chat GPT or Claude or all the other ones that are Bard, all the ones that are out there, they're generating content. That's what it's doing, is taking the source of component, predicting the actual element to it. So how do we use this in what we do, right, in the cybersecurity space and kind of bring those two things together? And, as we started to look through those types of scenarios, first off, the first piece to it is we need to start taking the mindset of the bad guy and invoking that into what we do for a living, right? So if you're going to be a security guy in the physical world and you're going to walk in here and you're going to say, I need to put cameras and sensors and things around, you're going to say, first and foremost, if I'm a thief, how am I going to break in? And then that's how you figure out where you put things. Same mindset in the virtual world and what we do. We need to continue to have that adversarial mindset that says, how are they going to get in here? And so it's a little harder in the digital world because you can't physically touch it or see it, but you can see the actual code. You understand those scenarios. So with all of that going on, this is where the predictive AI kind of component comes into play. We now take the systems themselves and turn them back on to data that think like an adversary and allow that capability to actually work. So that's where this future of where we're going from cybersecurity kind of brings it together. So I'll talk about a couple of use cases as we go through this. But why does it matter? Why does this really matter? Why it matters is because what we're really driving for at the end of the day is material risk, right? So the actual material risk. So when we started, the world's down at the bottom left-hand corner where we've all worked on like security operations. We all understand kind of the world of even moving up to threat hunting. Threat hunting is finding something that's happened. At some point, we want to actually stop something before it happens, right? The analogy I use a lot is, I use a healthcare analogy, right? You've got a regular doctor you go to, you feel sick, you go to them and you say, hey, I'm not feeling well. The doctor treats the symptoms. They try to find the actual root cause. They try to get you back to a normalized, what they call state of health. Well, the more future predictive component is like integrated medicine or functional medicine, where they're taking all kinds of data and sensors from you. And they're saying, look, we know you feel healthy, but we want to take your blood. We want to take your VO2 max. And we were looking for all of these various things in that data and come back and say, you may feel healthy, but you're actually on a path to become a diabetic because your A1C is too high. That's the predictive analogy inside the healthcare side of the fence. We're doing the same thing here inside of the cybersecurity side of the fence, is getting to that predictive component that says the adversary is going to come at you and they're going to come at you in this way and leverage this AI function to actually show us in real time. In fact, one of the major things that we do with regards to this is we take the customer environment from a data perspective and we create a digital twin of that environment and then fundamentally throw, in fact, internally we call them evil bots with the term in there. We take all of these AI-based components and attack the ever-living environment of how and map it all out. So this is where the attack paths and all the other stuff. And we saw a lot of this type of stuff that comes in from a context perspective in what Mike and George and everybody else sort of showed on the Fal.con component. And that's a lot of where our data actually comes from in many cases. We take in authentication data, we're taking in vulnerability data, we're taking all these other things, we're bringing out all of that, and we coexist with regards to what we're doing on the Fal.con platform. So we bring those things together to kind of enhance this overall function for them. So, but AI doesn't just stop at the prediction side of the fence. When we go through this, it's like at some point, it's like, okay, we can tell you these are the things that you ultimately want to see, and that's great. But then at some point, you got to get to the point of what do I do about it? And the funny part about it is like we focus very heavily on CVEs and patches and all the things that we got to deal with that. But one of the things we have found that's come to light is in our systems, I would tell you about 80% of the time, it's misconfigurations. You end up with somebody with domain credentials of some kind, and at some point, you've got to start figuring out how do you actually solve that problem. Well, how do you find those things if it's not a patch? Yeah, they can turn Patch Tuesday into a problem for you. That's an element to it, but you only want to deal with those where they matter. The generative side of the fence starts to actually give you now, and this is where the future of where we've taken this, is the ability to use generative AI to actually generate the simulations from a testing and validation perspective. So now we have the ability to actually not just predict where we're going, but we can actually test and validate against all of that and generate the actual bad outcome that could happen, apply that against this digital twin-based capability, and actually tell without a shadow of a doubt, yes, this is something you are vulnerable to. Yes, this does have material risk. And yes, this is something that you can actually fix. And how do you fix that? You fix it by cutting off the attack path prior to it actually getting done in a proactive manner. This is where you get and leverage the predictive component to truly be proactive in your overall scenario, what you're doing. So a couple of scenarios in here. So I put a couple of case studies. We had, I'm not obviously getting into all the names because we're in security, we have trust issues, so we certainly don't like to advertise company names per se. But we had a very large healthcare organization. We walked in, we started doing this analysis with regards to our systems. And first thing we found immediately, the system found was the 500 plus kind of areas of attack you could actually go after. Right, all of this componentry that goes in and says, okay, well, here's all of your attack paths and here's all the things we can do. Well, that's a lot of work with regards to that, but how do you bring that down to the top items? And the system is able to actually triage those elements down. It says, and here is the top 3 things you can actually do with regards to those responses that will cause the best, most material risk reduction factor in your environment. And so that's where the generative and the predictive AI components really kind of come into play, bringing those two things together in some environment. And then you take the generative side of it and you say, all right, this is the attack that we predicted would happen. We create the validation component and we validate that function against it. Now we can truly prove that, yes, it is an issue and cut the actual attack path off. And that's the whole premise behind how we actually bring these capabilities together. The CrowdStrike component and how we go to market with regards to them is really about how we revolutionize our ability to enhance the security operation function. Mike and George just talked about a whole bunch of stuff that goes into how you make your security operation function faster and get better with regards to this. And we are in partnership with them, driving the same capability into the environment, into all of your environments from a customer perspective where we can, and being able to provide that functional for you guys. And so what we do is we take the Fal.con platform, have that capability that sits out there, we wrap our Epiphany component with it, and then we actually can give that both as a product, but more importantly, as an outcome-based service. So we actually will bring the outcome to you where needed. We have service providers. We have a whole bunch of other folks who actually provide some of the function that goes with that. But in our particular case, we have all of those capabilities to provide that AI kind of wrapper function above and beyond all of those predictive areas that the Fal.con Complete component is handling from their side of it. We're handling all the other data sources and all the other elements that go with it. So we bring all of those two things together to really provide that full picture for them. So that said, questions?
I have a question. Can we get some applause, my friends, for Brett? Let's go.
Thank you very much. And I can take no credit for the slide graphic component.
My God, those are good. It's crazy.
We came up with this. Our graphics guy is just absolutely phenomenal. So,
I mean, I've seen, I don't know, maybe 30 presentations at least over the last 3 days. Nothing against anyone else, but this is by far and large the best looking slide we've had in any presentation, period. It's no doubt. Any questions out there? I'd love to come around and give you guys an opportunity to ask or comment on anything. You guys have anything out there? Eric, you got something for us? Oh, I knew it. Our friend here participates in a lot of these presentations. Eric from Georgia, take it away.
My question is to be very clear, first of all, if there's an existing vulnerability, your company does not perform any kind of remediation, right?
Can,
Okay.
but,
Because
but,
it sounds very much like
but what we will do is tell you exactly what the remediation is
just
specifically.
remediation, but it does not perform any
Yeah.
kind of.
I'm not going to take the. Let me be clear on that. We've had this conversation a lot. Here's the problem with automating the remediation function. I've been doing cybersecurity for 2.5 decades, and we run into major trust problems in our world. Right? If you go back to the days of old, where we were talking about an IDS and an IPS, that just that argument of going back and forth, where you put something in actual blocking mode back in the day. The problem with it is you end up with availability problems when you bring something down you're not supposed to. So there's a trust problem in our world. So when you get into the remediation component, the answer is, can I go do remediation? Yes, I absolutely can. Do you trust me to actually take the remediation action? So you see the dilemma that we face? Right. So the point is, from a platform perspective, can I? Yes, absolutely. Will I?
Well, so back to your application there. It sounds more like a vulnerability scanner, a very advanced one.
No, let me be clear on that, right? From a vulnerability scanning has been age old, right? Forever, right? Like all of those other elements, right? We leverage the data, that's one of the data sources that we'll pull into it. So multiple data sources. We're taking input data from, so I'll just speak in CrowdStrike terms specifically. We're taking Spotlight related data, Discover related data, identity related data, right? That comes in with the user profiles. It's also the machine-based components, and compiling all of that, and then basically creating a virtual environment of what the environment for the customer looks like, and then creating a twin to that, and then running everything against simulations against that digital twin. Make sense? Yes.
So, one last thing. So ultimately, I mean, CrowdStrike does almost the same thing.
Sort of.
But ultimately, is it saving time and eliminating false positives? And is it modeling? You cannot have models, right?
No, the biggest add-on, the biggest piece that we have, and I'll add to that, is when we create, so CrowdStrike's looking at all of your real-time data. They're looking at stuff right now. They're looking at stuff that was in the past from a logging perspective, right? The log scale components, we do a bunch of stuff around that. They're looking at all of those elements. From a future perspective, right? One of the major elements that we have to be able to do is create a simulate. Like, I can't run everything on your production environment with regards to it because I don't want to break it down, right? So that's where this quote unquote digital twin element comes into play. That's where we get into the predictive side of the fence to be able to drive that sort of motion. And then, in the world of breach attack simulation type environments, we actually have validation-based capabilities that can truly run that piece of malware with the element against it in the system in a flag perspective that says, go get this thing and see if that's real. And we do that in that environment. And we can do that in real time in your environment or in the simulated component. Those are additive components above and beyond where we take to extend what the Fal.con platform has the capability of doing. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Nice discussion. That's good stuff. Yeah. Anyone else out there? Yes. Come to my friend Michael. Where do you live, Michael? Jersey?
Hi. So, in summary, would you say that you're AI-powered blue team?
AI-powered what?
Blue team.
I'm gonna put it more closer to purple, right?
Okay.
We feed a lot of data to the blue team side of the fence, but we have a tendency, again, we're taking an AI-powered red team approach, bringing the two things together. We classify that more in the purple, it's kind of sitting in the middle, because we have a tendency to feed both. Okay?